Okay, so welcome to the Chaos Common Working Group meeting for June 25th. So the first thing on the agenda is to recruit someone to lead the meeting on July 9th because I have a conflict and so I can't be here. So does anybody want to volunteer?
I can do it. I'm not going anywhere.
Perfect. All right, you're on the hook. So this means you also have to put together the agenda and send out the email a couple of days before the meeting.
Okay, I will make I'm just going to put a calendar notice, send out common email.
Yep.
I'll put it in my calendar too to remind Sean to send out the calendar.
Can we all do that in unison and then just keep pinging him? No.
No, Matt's worked with me long enough to know that he probably should do that to make sure it happens. And I have to own that work that I'm doing on myself.
Okay, so the next thing is the action items, which I'm embarrassed to do because the first one is mine and I just keep moving it every single week because I haven't done it. So I still haven't done it. Surprise, surprise. We won't talk about that. So action item, we'll just move straight on to Sean's action item, language distribution within a project. Says metric will be ready in 2 weeks.
Yep, I'm just gonna share right now. I plan to send out a plea for mercy and basically notify people that they can look at them or not, but I'm gonna finish a bunch of metrics that I have in progress by the end of Saturday. I just had some stuff come up in my life where I didn't do anything for the last 3 days except for deal with the stuff in my life, which briefly is my garage collapsed partially, and it was very complicated. Yeah, it was basically navigating my insurance policy to make sure I handled everything correctly so that I got them to pay for it, and that was complicated, and also making sure my house didn't fall down.
Wow.
So yeah, it kept me really busy. So I'm not going to share that detail in the email. I'm just going to say, I'm going to do this. This metric is going to be released in draft here. I would like it to be reviewed in this period, or you can review it later on. It's up to the community to decide what to do with my tardiness, because it's not like the first time I've been late.
In reality, we can use that month period to review it, even in the working group. There's nothing that says we can't do that.
Yeah, I just want to be candid about my intentions and that these metrics are not released, but they will be. So that, if someone goes to looks at the list right now, it's not going to show up, but there's no issue for it, and there's going to be. So.
Okay, sounds good. The next action item was from Daniel to look at a few of the metrics that he had been working on, and he's not on the call, so we'll just punt that one to the next meeting. Kevin, I think he did move the time to first response to the website.
I'll check.
Okay. And Sean, you had an action item to take Augur's implementation for time to first response and update the metric with a screenshot.
Yeah, and did I do that? I don't think I did that actually, and I have.
No.
I mean, I just showed. The funniest thing is I just showed that in the. Did I show that one? Time to first. Actually, that wasn't in the. That's in the pull request, but we have that. So yeah, I'll make a note of that as well. Things Sean is late on. Let's just stack them up.
Yeah, somebody dropped the link in. Time to first response is on the website.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so those are the action items from last week. And then next, I think we wanted to review the issues and pull requests. So there are no pull requests. I merged, there was one with a metric, so I merged that so we could get it into the release. So that's looking pretty good. There is, oh, hey, Georg.
Hello.
Hello there. We were just, oh, and Daniel's here too. Maybe we'll backtrack on, let's backtrack.
Sorry for
Maybe
the
Daniel and I were in the same meeting just now.
maybe.
No. Hey, Daniel, you had an action item from the last meeting to look at some metrics that were already done and check that they were in the spreadsheet. I think it was related to issue number 13.
That was already fixed the previous week, because right? Maybe I'm wrong. Let me check. Oh yeah, what I did. Yeah, I now remember. Sorry.
Yeah.
So what I did was to add those to the spreadsheet to be part of next steps. I didn't know if that was the right way of proceeding, but they are in the spreadsheet. So this is good.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right, so I'll just delete that one since it's done.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. And then now we were just gonna have a look at the issues. I can share my screen. I'm just picking which window to share so I don't share anything embarrassing. You never know.
No, I
okay.
don't.
So we have, as far as like new ones, we have the common metrics release notes. So we have the time to close metric, time to release metric. So these are, yes, okay. So these are the ones that are new for the release. Does anybody want to take a shot at updating those so that we have, oops.
So there at the bottom was a to-do. Sean, you wanted to add screenshots from time to release to the metric?
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
talked about that. He's going to do that. He
Yeah.
hasn't done yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we still need to add the whatever we want to say in the release notes about the metric. So
I think it's a simple entry, new metric, time to release.
okay.
And
And
didn't
we're
we
gonna
also
have contributor location.
Yeah, it's contributor location is the new one that we need to add here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, didn't we restructure the focus areas, or was that last release?
That was last release.
That was the last one.
Who, what, when, where thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You're right. That was last release. Oh, types of contributions is also a new metric that we included.
So we
Let's
have we have time to close, which was part of the continuous metrics release, which is, are you just going to look at the spreadsheet?
Yep.
Yeah.
And there was one folks which was proposed for the common.
I'll just write a comment here to see if this is what we want.
So I think time to close and time to first response were already released.
Yeah.
But if we add an auger visualization,
Yep.
then we should mention that in the release notes. And then the release notes that we still need to write are for contributor location, because that's the one I just merged this week. That's the new bit that wasn't part of a continuous release that's going into the release.
For the and maybe this takes a slightly sidetrack note, as I apologize, for the contributor employer location. I remember that was like somewhat an analogous and parallel piece. I mean, I don't know sort of how things go through release cycles and things like that. Is that just something we just want to, bump out to the next one, or because it's pretty similar in a lot of ways to the employer location, if that's something we would want to fast track in? I'll leave it to y'all for, guidance there, but I remember that one being just about as close. Like, I'm just looking at it now and I don't think I see anything open with it. And I think we discussed it many meetings ago, but I don't know what you all think there.
Let's have a quick look at it and then we can decide.
It's almost like we'd have to compare it to contributor location to see, because some of those visuals look similar.
Yeah, they probably don't just look similar. They probably might even be sort of the same thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, well, go ahead.
The question I have then is contributor location sounds broader, and contributor employer location almost sounds like a filter on contributor location.
Yeah, that might have been where we settled. I mean, this has been several meetings ago, but maybe that's sort of where we settled, of just adding an employer as a filter. Although I think, if I recall, a little bit of the difference was the presumption that like one could be based in London, yet your employer is in New York. And, sometimes, you might be someone who works on your employer's hours on open source versus your own. So I remember that being a distinction, but I don't know if that's enough to your point, I don't know if that's enough of just being a different way to capture and filter versus having its own metric.
I have one question on that also, is like in GitHub, from where our main data source is coming, over there's a geolocation of the contributor, like every contributor have a location. But from that, I don't see any connection of the employer location and through that source. So
I think
how that is going to be filtered?
So employer can be discerned in two ways. The most common way is to find it. If they've made one commit using their employer's domain, you can estimate. In a lot of cases, there's a CNCF list that has people listing their employer. Sometimes you won't know. And when it comes to implications from time zone, I mean, obviously, like location, you can't really pull it from GitHub. You can, but it's very, very noisy data because a lot of people have Earth.
So
And
reading
there's just data imperfections.
Yeah.
Even the employer is mentioned in the domain of the contributor, but you don't know the location of the employer. It's just the domain.
Yeah.
So,
like my main email address is acm.org. So am I going to be, in some cases, I would be automatically an employee of the ACM because I never use my Missouri email address, or hardly ever.
So I'm looking at the two metrics side by side right now, and contributor employer location to me is distinctly enough different because the way we go about collecting the data is different from contributor location. So I think it is a different data that we are generating.
So I think what we probably want to do with this one is move it to the metrics to work on next.
Makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because what we'll probably do with this one, John, is we'll probably do it as part of the continuous metrics release. So it'll probably go out just after the release as part of the kind of the continuous one, because I think that this will also give us time to get feedback on contributor location and see if people had suggestions on that for things that we need to think about with this one as well.
I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I knew they were both put together in parallel to a degree, so I just wanted to have a little bit of that of just making sure. But I sort of like the approach of let's learn from the contributor location and then use that as feedback for tweaking in the employer one. That makes a ton of sense.
I'm just gonna add that as a note in the spreadsheet. If somebody could take notes in the notes document, that would be awesome, because I don't think any of us are actually doing that. But it does sound like it probably needs a little more work based on the discussion that we just had around it, that there's still some questions. So we'll continue to work on that one as well. So I think in the review the PR's issues section, we have this issue 60 that we need to contributor location.
Right, so 2 were released under the CMC, the continuous metrics, and then contributor location is just part of this review or part of this release.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Any other questions on the release notes? What exactly do we need to write for the release notes for the contributor location? Just that it's being released, or is there anything specific that we need to?
I don't know. I think.
Right. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was thinking that the metric would speak for itself. That, you know, read the metric, unless there's something you think is. I mean, there are some special things, but I guess if we did that for every metric, I guess you mean the release notes is what you're asking about.
Yes. Yes.
I
mean, is this okay for the release notes, right?
Because we could get so detailed about release notes, or we could keep them like most release notes, which is just that we released this metric is included in this release. And I guess if there's something particularly special that can be written in a sentence or less, we could add that. But I don't think most release notes have long descriptions.
Okay, so let's look at the release notes. Where are the release notes?
Under the menu, metrics menu.
No.
Release history. That's the release notes.
Ah. Interesting. Okay, so that is a really poorly named metric or poorly named menu item, because to me, release history means that's where I would find old releases, not that's where I would find release notes, because I can't find the release notes for the current release.
I'll open an issue.
Okay, perfect.
And I know Kevin has an issue that he created in all the working groups that should contain the release notes. Like that's
the one we're looking at right now.
Yeah. Okay.
But you're right. This is all it needs to have. So I think we're done with this one for right now. I don't think there's no action item.
So while we are on the subject of continuous metric contribution and regular release, I just had a conversation with Kevin yesterday via email, because I was under the assumption we were going to put together a release candidate on the website with all of the new changes already in there, so we can review it, and then it becomes the released version later, like we did in the past. Mm-hmm. But the handbook and the process we outlined is different, where we say for the regular release, we're doing the same continuous metric release process for the metrics. We just bundle them together and talk about them at the same time. And then we don't create the website until the very end, when it actually goes into release. And so I was a little confused there, to be honest. I don't know how you all see it. Unfortunately, Kevin is not here to talk about the process.
Could you explain that again? What the two differences are? I'm sorry, I didn't totally catch that.
In January, when we were working on the release for the metrics before FOSDEM, we had a website parallel to our metrics website that was including all of the new metrics. It was our release candidate page. Do you remember that?
No, but I believe you. I just don't remember
Okay.
that.
I'm talking about that particular page where we had everything ready for the release for people to look at and comment about so that we could see what the release would look like 1 month before we actually released it.
And it was as a web page, just so people could visualize it, not repo by repo, but as a web page.
Yeah, you know our metric
Oh,
page?
I do remember this. And then if you wanted to add a comment, like it had a link to the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I remember this.
And so the new process that we have in the handbook does not include this release candidate page.
So how do people find how would somebody, let's say a board member who's not as involved in each of the working groups, who wants to just go through and, read all of the released metrics, how would they do that?
I think
My
at
question.
chaos.community/metrics.
Not if we don't put it there. That was what Georg was saying, that the process has been changed to not do that because of the process that we're using for the continuous released metrics. But I don't think it's going to be practical to ask people to dig through issues.
I thought Kevin had been publishing the continuous release metrics on the website.
After they went through the review period, but now we are in a phase where we want to review multiple metrics for the actual release.
Right.
And in the past, we did this by putting them on the website as, here's a draft of what the future release will look like. Take a look. Here's a link if you want to comment.
So we need a list of all of the metrics that are release candidates, right? That's what's missing from the process.
We need to somehow communicate that, hey, we are now in the
So I would
review period.
I would propose, tell me if this works with, that we can make this change with the community handbook, Georg, that we go back to offering the web page, making sure that that's an explicit thing during this 30-day period. Because that really is the main center point where people can take a look at the metrics and then click on the issue to take them to the GitHub spot. To Don's point, right? Asking people to rummage through all of the repos is not really a practical way to ask people to do it.
Oh, you're right. It's kind of mean.
So then the ones that have already been released as CMCs, as the continuous metric. So for the ones that are going as part of the regular release, I think it's pretty easy just to link to the issue, because that public comment period is over. Or I'm sorry, that public comment period is open. And so for the CMCs, we could actually just reopen that issue. And technically it will get 2 30-day review periods, CMCs will. I don't think that breaks. I don't think that's going to cause big problems. And then the metrics that are already released, meaning they're not like they were released prior to FOSDEM, they don't have a link to an issue. They're marked as already released. What do people think of that?
I think that is a good way forward, and that's somehow how I imagined we were doing it, but the handbook didn't reflect that.
Okay.
And then
seems reasonable.
Also, the metrics that we substantially changed, we also wanted to have an issue to comment on those.
Yeah, I agree with that. It wasn't just like a grammatical change or a new image or something like that. Okay. I agree.
And remind me, what does, so continuous metric, what's that other C stand for?
Contribution.
Okay.
We could just
I
call
was
it
about to ask that
CMR.
John,
We
thank you.
we could just do CMR.
Because I've been
It's
thinking of
okay.
it as a continuous metrics release. And so I was like, CMC, continuous metric, what?
Sorry,
Committee.
I came up with that name.
I don't really, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't really matter. I just didn't know what it stood for, and then I felt silly.
No, I didn't either. You're good.
So
Okay.
the idea behind calling it CMC versus CMR is that they are continuously contributed to the release, but they're not officially released until the next major release. So that's why I made that differentiation with the naming. But we
Okay,
can
that's
change
fine.
that.
No, it's fine. I just couldn't figure it out on my own. Other questions about the release and or the spreadsheet?
My one question is to Georg, just on the handbook. Can you update the handbook? And we need to communicate this to Kevin. That's all. Just so he.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. So the only other thing we had on the agenda for today was to talk about which metrics to work on next. So we talked about contributor employer location as one that we wanted to continue to work on. Are there any others that we want to, anybody wants to start? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
The one that is coming up a lot in a variety of different working groups is forks.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna release that under common. That I know Vinod was working on it.
I have
And-
worked on it, so the sheet is there, but I just need a feedback, like more areas, and I was trying to find out the visualization. I couldn't find exactly in Augur, especially.
All right, it's
bring
in
it
the
into
risk. It's on the risk page, but we can bring. I can help you finish that along with the other metric I have to finish for this working group.
No, it looks like somebody moved it here, so we have it.
I have put the Google Docs sheet.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like forks. Do you want to talk about it in the? You can bring it into the next meeting in July 9th, and we could all just go through it together and do it kind of as a working meeting.
Yes, that'll be good.
Okay. Oops. I will add that to the agenda for the next meeting. Okay.
I'm sorry, I had one last
Yeah.
or one other comment, like on the prior issue. The contributor location metric, the one that's going to be released that has not been part of the CMC, it needs an issue. We need to open an issue pointing to the. It's just a to-do item.
Do we do that? Last time Kevin did all of those issues for feedback so that he could then just link them.
I think Kevin's trying to not have to do all that himself.
Oh, okay, totally.
Because he's smart. He's trying to delegate. We could all learn from Kevin.
As he should. Okay. Does anybody want to volunteer to create that issue?
I can do it. I just wanted to make sure that we track that.
Okay. That'd be great. And so it looks like the other one that we're working on, which I think we just talked about a little bit, Sean, earlier, is the language distribution one that you're working on. So it sounds like that's pretty meaty for us to work on next. It looks like we've got 3 that are kind of in progress.
I'm actually gonna finish proposing that one because it exists in Augur and it's not hard. It's not hard to explain. It's not hard to define, and I said I could like schedule 2 hours just writing metrics every week, I think, life, because it always seems to fall to the bottom of the pile. I'll do that right now.
Cool.
With that respect, something I can work at. I was looking at the what contribution lines and files. Something I can help with, or any of the when.
Which one? The lines and files, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want me to add that to in progress? Have you started on that, or is that just something you plan to start on?
Oh, I would plan to start
Okay.
with it.
So I'll leave it under considering. Is there a better category for that right now?
Okay.
I'll put it as in progress so that we remember that we're working on that one next, if
Okay.
that's all right with everybody.
And my only question about that one is the metrics that it's related to are all living in evolution. So these are further elaborations on evolution metrics. I'm not I'd object to it being in this working group. I'm just pointing out that.
Is it duplication of stuff you've done in that working group, or do you think it
No,
belongs
no.
more in that working
I
group?
mean, lines of code is in working groups, but I don't think that's what is meant. Is it? Daniel, is lines meant to be lines of code?
So what I had in mind is, so I was thinking of this as what contribution. So then is basically each commit has modified or added or removed certain files and lines of code. So my idea was to start from a high level perspective, just work with numbers. We can even go perhaps with the path or how many module, how deep you go in the tree, let's say in the hierarchy, but
Yeah,
that would be kind of all initially. Then we can discuss about any other things.
okay, because lines of code, I believe it includes fill parameters for lines added, lines removed, and white space in the metric that's already in evolution. I don't think there is a files metric per commit. That metric doesn't exist. So I guess maybe just look over an evolution and take a look and think if you see, it could be the case that maybe there are metrics in evolution that need to move over to common because they belong in common, or but just look at the lines of code metric and see how it relates to what you're thinking, and maybe we can chat about it in the next meeting, because I don't think we want to do the analysis while we're standing here.
Oh, Don, you're mute. Sorry.
I am on mute. I'm talking to myself. I added that as an action item in the notes for Daniel and Sean to look, because there's to just make sure we don't have any duplication with the evolution metrics.
Sounds good.
Okay, so this is good. So I think we have the 3 that we're going to work on next, which is great. And then what I put together for the agenda for next week, at least the stuff we have now, is obviously action items, PRs and issues, including any release feedback. And then we use it as kind of a working session for Vinod to work on review the forks metric and go through that with everybody, and that way you can get some good feedback on it. Yeah, Matt.
I just I created the issue and I reopened the other 2 CMC issues, just so when we're ready for the release. So those should be all set.
Ah, perfect. Okay. Do we need to send those to Kevin or anything to make sure that?
I think Georg was going to circle back with Kevin. Georg, I can do it too if you don't have the time.
I'm working on the handbook update right now, so I'll send a draft for that to you and Kevin to review.
Okay.
I think the bit that we want to make sure is that Kevin knows that we've opened the 3 issues for the released metrics. So,
You can send him a message, Matt.
Okay, I'll do that. And you're not related to, I guess, related to Common, but I'll make sure that we follow this process in all the other working groups as well. If there have been any other CMC metrics, that we get that all squared away.
cool. All right. Is there anything else that we want to chat about? I think we've reached the end of the agenda, unless somebody has anything else that they want to talk about.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. So Sean, you're up for July 9th. You have a start for the agenda.
Yep. Thank you.
And with that, I guess I'll just give everybody 19 minutes back.
That
Everybody.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Perfect. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay.